everything Elvis fails to understand about the true story. A life as amazing as Elvis Presley's cannot be adequately shown in a 2.5-hour film. Elvis Presley, who was born in Tupelo, Mississippi, attained global fame at the age of 19 and is still regarded as one of the most lasting symbols of the 20th century. 45 years after his untimely death at the age of 42, Presley is still one of the highest-paid celebrities of all time. Numerous stories about his life have been written for movies, TV series, novels, podcasts, and the hip-swivels of innumerable Elvis impersonators. Presley can be interpreted as a symbol of resistance to post-war puritanism, a warning about the dangers of addiction, or the pinnacle of racial appropriation, depending on the perspective. A high-octane birth to death and beyond reimagining of the king of rock and roll, Austin Butler, told through the eyes of his cunning, notorious manager Colonel Tom Parker, was published in 2022 by Moulin Rouge. And the Great Gatsby filmmaker Baz Luhrmann, Tom Hanks. Elvis plays fast and loose, employing maximalist style and anachronistic elements to depict the shock of adrenaline Presley gave to 1950s America, similar to Luhrmann's dizzying journeys to 1890s Paris and 1920s New York. Presley's life is depicted in broad strokes, from Memphis to Hollywood to Vegas, much in the order in which it occurred. However, a few aspects of the movie deviate from reality, either for dramatic effect or to support director Baz Luhrmann's beliefs about what Elvis means in the modern world. Let's examine the errors Elvis makes in the real-life account. 1. On stage, Colonel Tom fired. Things between Presley and Parker ultimately came to a head in 1974 after years of building tension in Las Vegas. While Parker's ambition of traveling the globe grew further away, Parker's Dutch birth, his illegal status, and the fact that he essentially sold Elvis to the International Hotel in return for limitless credit on the casino floor have all been made public by an anonymous letter written to Jerry Schilling. Before a performance, an exhausted Elvis passes out backstage. At Parker's request, an amphetamine dose is administered to revive him. Undrunken, slurring Elvis introduces Parker to the audience enthusiastically on stage in the middle of the performance, as we had seen him do in a previous scene, but he soon turns icy and contemptuous. He dismisses Parker in full front of the crowd in a loud, dramatic turn. This scenario has a broader error that we'll discuss later, but first, this never took place. That year, there was a situation in which Presley insulted hotel owner Baron Hilton on stage because Hilton had let go of one of Presley's favorite hotel staff members. That led to a yelling confrontation between him and Parker backstage, which almost ended their relationship, but that was the closest real life ever came to the movie's on-screen collapse. According to author Alana Nash, Elvis would never have been so rude as to have fired Colonel from the stage. 2. Andreas Cornelius Van Cauck's unsolved mystery. What specifically Elvis, or anybody, understood about the real identity of Colonel Tom Parker is the most important question in the onstage fire sequence and the movie as a whole. He maintained for many years that he was a nice old lad from Huntington, West Virginia who had left home as a youngster to join the circus, where he had acquired a somewhat European accent. Everyone in the music industry seemed to have no problem with the carnival barker's origins as long as the money kept coming in, despite the fact that he made enemies left and right, including former client Hank Snow. Elvis is told from Parker's perspective, and weighted by the revelations about his life that only came to light after Presley's death. It wasn't until the early 1980s that it became widely known that Parker was actually Andreas Cornelius Van Cauck, a Dutch immigrant who had briefly served in the U.S. Army but had never become a naturalized citizen. He fled from the Netherlands in 1929, possibly after being implicated in the murder of a woman named Anna van den Enden, and he still had family in Europe that he had broken all contact with. The filmmakers are aware of all of these details, and to some extent they assume that the viewer is aware of them as well. This may explain why Tom Hanks adopts a thick Dutch accent so convincing that not even a gullible child from Mississippi would ever believe that he is merely a hillbilly from West Virginia. 3. Threats of death. Following the popularity of the 1968 comeback special, Presley is on a high and has enormous ambitions. He makes arrangements to finally go on tour, but Parker first schedules him for a lengthy performance at the recently opened Hilton International Hotel in Las Vegas. Due to its success, the residency in Vegas is extended. Parker is deeply concerned about protecting Elvis' safety abroad, especially after frightening death threats start arriving in the mail as Presley continues to prepare his world tour. Presley is unaware that Parker, an illegal immigrant who fears deportation if he ever leaves the country, is purposefully postponing the start of the overseas tour. The movie makes a strong case that Parker fabricated Presley's death threats in order to substantiate his fictitious security worries. Even while we may never know if some of Colonel Tom's death threats were genuine, we do know that many of them were because of the FBI. The FBI closely monitored Elvis and his actions from the moment he first came to public attention because director J. Edgar Hoover was concerned that he may have a corrupting effect on the nation's young. A 1956 postal death threat was found in the huge FBI file on Presley, along with confirmations of threats made against Presley and his colleagues in the 1970s. 4. The Return Special. In June 1968, when Robert Kennedy is killed, Elvis and his crew are busy filming a performance special for television. Colonel Tom Parker made Elvis wear ugly sweaters and built an extravagant North Pole set for him to perform on in order to sell the program to NBC as a Christmas special to be shown in December. However, Steve Binder, Dacre Montgomery, the director of the special, and Elvis have other ideas. Elvis hopes to utilize the program to restart his career and return to his gritty rock and roll beginnings. They forego the sweater in favor of a black leather jumpsuit against the Colonel's advice and stop thinking about the North Pole. The ensuing concert movie, popularly known as the Comeback Special from 1968, is a tremendous hit and the King's modern victory. This relationship is mostly made up for the movie, much as the previous time Presley and Parker disagreed throughout the course of his career. The program was never intended to be a Christmas special in real life, according to historian Alana Nash, via Variety, other than by virtue of broadcasting in December. No fairy tale Christmas set or Christmas sweater ever existed. That is how Luhrmann is a performer. The notion that Presley and Binder would rebel against Parker during filming is also not particularly realistic, either in terms of Elvis' relationship with Parker or the process of making a television program. 5. Memphis is on fire. Presley appeared in almost 30 Hollywood films between 1956 and 1969. For the majority of the 1960s, his career was dominated by his film work as an actor and singer, which Baz Luhrmann skims over with a snappy montage. The movie appears to think that Elvis' time in Hollywood was spent on corny kitsch that had little to do with the rebellious, fundamentally political artist he really was. However, the assassinations of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy in 1968 cause his conscience to be aroused. Both Priscilla and Presley's bodyguard Jerry Schilling, Luke Bracey, believe that Presley need to make a statement following King's murder in Memphis. Memphis is burning, Priscilla begs. The public response to King's death in Memphis was less intense than it was in other large cities throughout the nation. The first night in Memphis after King's assassination saw sporadic acts of violence and looting, including the police shooting of a 26-year-old black man. according to author Hampton Sides in the 2010 book Hellhound on his trail about King's killer James Earl Ray. However, Memphis experienced an eerie calm or perhaps deep mourning after King's passing, unlike other cities where riots persisted for nearly 2 weeks. As a result, King's widow Coretta Scott King was able to travel there without risk 4 days later to continue her husband's work with the Memphis sanitation workers' strike. However, Memphis experienced an eerie calm or perhaps deep mourning after King's passing, unlike other cities where riots persisted for nearly 2 weeks. As a result, King's widow Coretta Scott King was able to travel there without risk 4 days later to continue her husband's work with the Memphis sanitation workers' strike. 6. Presley and Priscilla. Priscilla Presley has long served as the public face of her ex-legacy. Husbands. She worked as a producer and/or consultant on many of the movies about Elvis' life, oversaw AP for many years, allowed tours of Graceland in 1983, wrote a candid memoir about their tumultuous marriage, and is generally available to speak about Elvis whenever and wherever. So it surprises me a bit how little she appears in Luhrmann's movie. Only 3 major scenes feature the character of Priscilla, played by Australian actress Olivia de Jonge, their courtship while he was stationed in Germany, the point in 1972 when his extramarital affairs and drug use became too much for her to handle, and their final conversation in 1975, when Elvis, who was nearing the end of his career, expressed his concerns that he had accomplished nothing in his life. Most of the Priscilla-related flaws in the movie are errors of omission. The film omits the damaging information that she was just 14 years old, 10 years his junior, when she first met Elvis, as well as the fact that Presley made arrangements for Priscilla to live with him at Graceland and finish high school in Memphis when she left the army. The weird incident in which Priscilla had an affair with Mike Stone, her martial arts instructor, at the end of their marriage, and which Elvis allegedly thought about killing, is also left out of the movie. 7. Elvis, Don't Change. At the end of the 1950s, Presley transformed from a rebellious provocateur to an upstanding all-American family entertainer in a matter of short years. Beginning with a humiliating appearance on The Steve Allen Show where he sings Hound Dog with a real dog on stage, Parker orchestrates this in the movie against Elvis' wishes. Outside of Graceland, demonstrators are lined up in the streets with placards that read, "Don't change, Elvis. And we want the old Elvis back." Parker and the Memphis police had told Elvis not to move during a crucial concert at the Memphis Fairgrounds, but Elvis' performance is so powerful that it sparks a riot. Elvis is brought away in a police vehicle and warned that he might spend time in jail or the army. The Memphis Fairground riot is a mix of several distinct performances, most notably one in Jacksonville, Florida, when a local court advised Presley against any indecent conduct. In contrast, the performance Steve Allen is based on a factual event. Alana Nash, however, finds it absurd that the movie presents the sense that Parker degraded Elvis' image as a result of being blackmailed by shady establishment forces. Parker viewed any dispute as positive press. Presley's time in the army was undoubtedly intended to give him a more family-friendly reputation, but for a far more straightforward reason: professional longevity. According to Nash, neither Parker nor Elvis believed that rock and roll would last. Elvis, in particular, believed that everything may already be finished by the time he left the army. 8. Ups and downs. Presley's prescription medication addiction wasn't fully understood until after his tragic death at age 42 from a heart attack that was probably brought on by his continued substance misuse. Although it is now generally known that he depended on amphetamines, also known as uppers, to keep up with his demanding tour schedule and barbiturates, often known as downers, to aid in his sleep, particularly in the last 10 years of his life, it is unknown when his drug usage first started. In Elvis, it is proven that Presley's very first rural tour in 1955 is when the pill problem initially started. Elvis struggles to remain awake in one scene while riding in a vehicle with his band. Presley is offered a white pill by bass musician Bill Black, Adam Dunn, who claims it would give him some spring in your stride. Over the years, a lot of hypotheses concerning Elvis' addiction's beginning have been circulated. According to unnamed sources who speculated in 1979's New York Times, Presley's pill addiction may have started in the 1950s as a result of his religious opposition to alcohol and his belief that prescribed medications were more legitimate than illicit substances. He may have been stealing his mother's diet pills even before that, according to another report. During his 2 years in the Army from 1958 to 1960, a fellow soldier allegedly introduced Presley to amphetamines, according to Presley writer Peter Guralnick, via The Washington Post. Whatever the case, there doesn't appear to be any proof that Black served as his initial source in reality. 9. Elvis and the King. Presley's relationship with blues music and Southern African American culture in Guinea is one of the most contentious parts of his life and legacy. The movie by Luhrmann makes a concerted effort to show that Presley's love of gospel and blues music was a real one and that his usage of black music and culture was an expression of respect, not exploitation. Presley's relationship with blues music and Southern African American culture in general is one of the most contentious parts of his life and legacy. The movie by Luhrmann makes a concerted effort to show that Presley's love of gospel and blues music was a real one and that his usage of black music and culture was an expression of respect, not exploitation. While scenes from his early years in Memphis show him on Beale Street, surrounded by the sounds of black contemporaries like Little Richard, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and Big Mama Thornton, whose hit song Hound Dog would become one of Elvis' signature tunes, flashbacks show a young Elvis feeling the spirit in a black Pentecostal church in Mississippi. The movie also introduces him to blues icon B.B. King, Kelvin Harrison Jr., who at the time was a well-known DJ and musician and who had a funny detached attitude toward Presley's stardom. Alana Nash, a biographer, claims that this relationship, however, appears to have been extrapolated from a well-known image of the two men embracing backstage at a Memphis benefit performance that King was hosting. Presley did not perform at the event, but he did make a brief stage appearance at Rufus Thomas' request and offered the audience a little leg shake. In reality, King seems to have been a personal fan of Presley, even though he had mixed feelings about the success that Elvis and other white musicians had in reinterpreting black music. However, there is no proof that the two were close friends as the movie suggests. 10. Business owned by Elvis Presley. As Parker feeds honey into the ears of Elvis' parents Gladys, Helen Thompson, and Vernon Presley, the contract that prevented Hank Snow from managing Presley's career in real life is shown in the movie as a sort of agreement with the devil, Richard Roxburgh. At this point, Parker has already orchestrated Presley's transition from the small-time Sun Records to the major label RCA Victor, and he further solidifies his hold over the entire family by convincing them to establish a new company called Elvis Presley Enterprises, with Vernon, who had served time in prison for check forgery when Elvis was a boy, serving as the business manager. Gladys is skeptical of the Colonel, and would remain so up until her death in 1958, but signs the contract anyway when Parker coos about Elvis having the strength of two men, a knowing reference to Elvis' stillborn twin brother Jesse. Vernon was actually in charge of managing Elvis' private company, and Parker had a contract with Elvis and his family, and would later be executor of his estate. However, Elvis Presley Enterprises, also known as APE, wouldn't be established until after Presley passed away. Elvis' ex-wife Priscilla, Elvis' longtime accountant Joseph Hanks, not related to Tom, and Vernon established APE to safeguard and administer Elvis' estate. In 1982, APE made Graceland available for visits. Since then, the neighborhood has grown to include a resort, a commercial center, and a music venue. 11. Hank Snow. Elvis had already recorded his first hit song, "That's All Right, Mama," as the movie opens, but it is his participation on the nationally syndicated country music radio show Louisiana Hayride that makes him famous and takes him to Colonel Tom Parker, a former carnival barker turned music promoter. Hank Snow, a well-known country singer, is the star of Hayride. Luhrmann regular David Wenham, who is horrified by Presley's gyrations in front of the audience. Later, when Parker persuades Elvis to go it alone, Snow appears all too glad to say goodbye to the young guy. Snow's response serves as a metaphor for how Presley in particular and rock and roll in general endangered the musical establishment of the day, although Snow was no prude in real life. Early on, he and Parker both recognized Elvis Presley's earning potential. In fact, the two briefly shared career management of Presley. Snow had every financial incentive to make Elvis as popular as possible, and even let Elvis to finish up their performances, as his son Jimmie Rodgers Snow revealed years later. In actual life, Parker was responsible for Snow's departure from the Elvis Presley saga. According to historian James Dickerson, Parker first used Snow to persuade Presley's family to sign a new contract before defrauding Snow of his share. In June 2022, Dickerson told the New York Post, Hank Snow stated Parker was the lowest human being that had ever walked the earth.